I'll call the July 8th Norfolk School Building Committee meeting to order, to open. It's been a while, sorry, summer. Okay, so the first order of business is review and approve the minutes from May 20th. So these were just handed out, so I'll give everybody a minute, including myself, to take a peek. Seeing voting members all set? Yep. Okay, I am looking for a motion to approve the minutes from May 20th.
So moved.
Second that motion.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Awesome. So on to the cost estimate review with Justin.
Good evening, everyone. So Justin Tebow with AI3. Tonight's conversation is primarily cost estimates, but as you saw in your meeting packet, the first, 12 or 15 slides are the same floor plans, site plans. Again, just to remind everybody, I'm going to breeze over those, but they're there so we can always come back to them. So again, right now at this stage of the game, we have essentially 4 main options that have been priced out. The first one is the building addition option, so the brick and mortar option that was completed about a year ago. That has been re-estimated based on escalation and current rates, so that's included. And then we have the 3 modular options. Option 1, which is a 2-story option, which is the most comparable apples to apples to the permanent brick and mortar option. And then we have option 2, which is a 2-story option, which is set back beyond the access road, still in the back area of the building. And then we have option 3, which is a single-story modular option on the field out front. So again, looking at the brick and mortar option, direct connection, and it impacts the service road, the utilities, etc. So that has all been included in the estimates. It's connecting the 2 academic wings as they currently stand. Floor plans include all the spaces previously discussed, 2-story building, and it's a similar configuration as all of the 2-story options that the younger kids, the pre-K kids, would be on the first floor, and then the elementary students would be on the second floor. Again, utilizing some control and oversight from moving over the special education component for the administration presence. Second floor, again, would be the elementary students' classrooms, as well as the additional space required to support that curriculum. And then the site plan you can see here from the previous study, it's really connecting those 2 academic wings, enclosing the courtyard, and creating a new access area, service road, as well as parking spaces out behind, we'll call it behind the existing Freeman Kennedy, for the pre-K component for their unique and individual arrival, dismissal, drop-off periods and times. So option 1 for the mods, it's basically the same type of scheme, however, it's utilizing the modular component. So it's a linear bar, as you will. Initially, we had talked about it being directly or indirectly connected, so you'd have to leave the existing Freeman Kennedy, walk outside to some form or fashion with a canopy of some sort and or a fence to provide a safe component. And through the last conversation at the last meeting, what we did was we actually priced out what it would be to permanently attach it. Now, there is some additional work, and you'll see in the diagrams here shortly, but there is an added cost that will highlight specifically when we get to the cost estimates. So you can see here the two zones, the upper portion and the lower portion in orange. These would be additional stick-built components to actually connect to the modular components that would be constructed. Again, providing that fire rating and resistance as required based on building type to meet the building code. And then it would be located very similar location to the stick-built option. Again, providing parking, required play areas, etc., behind it as well. Option 2 would be locating the two-story configuration and L configuration past that service road, again, increasing the distance to walk to those modular classrooms. Again, pre-Ks on the first floor, elementary schools on the second floor. And you can see here the site plan really utilizing that space in between as the site circulation parking for parent pickup and drop-off for the youngest kids. And then option 3 is the single-story option, so no surprise here, it's the largest building footprint. It's the same area, approximately 36,000 square feet, just spread over one floor instead of two. You can see how it fits on the field as is today. So we've tried to utilize a lot of the existing circulation and parking areas to try to minimize that component, but you'll see within the pricing, it's still costly, and it didn't really save that much money. Again, what we did here, because we don't have the two stories to break up the pre-K students and the elementary students, the pre-K students are located in the left vertical component, and then the elementary students are located in the L configuration, sort of the bottom and the right portion of the building. Again, creating that separation between age groups, but on a single story component. And then that's how it's laying out on the site. So jumping in, before we jump into the actual numbers, what we did and what we typically do on all estimates is break out specific items to really lump it together to better understand. One item that we break out is building construction. What is the actual cost of the building itself? So anywhere from foundations, walls, structure, roof, windows, etc., the building itself. We also break out site work. And you'll see some variations, and that's whether it be utilities, electrical lines, sewer, whether that be soils and retaining walls and paving, and anything related to site is a separate line item. Phasing, GCs or general conditions, GRs or general requirements, insurances, etc. This is broken out as a separate line item. So what these are, it's the actual cost to build the building from a functional and a contractor standpoint. So this is their overhead, their insurances, all of that component that goes into building it. So it's on top of the building construction and the site work. And then soft costs. Soft costs are typically broken out separately. These are items like furniture, fixtures, and equipment, the design team fees, the OPM fees, contingencies, technology allowances, all of these additional soft costs. And those you'll see when we get to the numbers are at this stage of the game usually just percentages based upon all of the previous items here. This project is a little bit unique in that we were tasked with pricing 4 additional items, the building and site improvement items, and those include to replace the mechanical system chiller over by the gym, existing playground updates, again fixing the fencing, the poured-in-place surface, etc. Replace all the existing rooftop units, seeing there's going to be a crane on site, seeing the crew is already going to be here. What would that line item cost? And then the fourth one was to replace the entire fire alarm system. So this line item is within the existing building. It's in addition to the fire alarm that will be included with the modulars or the stick-built option. So that would be to replace it within the existing building. So looking at the actual numbers, and this is the same thing that is on your handout in front of you. And the numbers haven't changed from the slide deck that was circulated last week. We broke it down into the 4 columns based upon the options, so you can see how they stack up across all the line items. Looking at the left side, you can see building construction cost. That's the actual cost to build the building. You can see how it goes anywhere from 17 point, and I'm going to round these numbers just for brevity, but the numbers are in front of you and in the slide deck, etc. So 17.5 million for the stick-built. And then you can see 16.6, 15.2, and 15.9, 8, 9, whatever, for the different options, just for the building cost. So that's varying depending on, obviously the modulars are slightly cheaper, and just the options and configurations in general vary based upon 1-story, 2-story, etc. Replacing the mechanical system chiller, that's the same price across the board, approximately $440,000. Replace all the existing rooftop units, 2.9 million across the board on all of them. Playground updates, 1.3 million. Fire alarm system, 730,000. And site construction costs, this varies depending on which option, anywhere from 3.2 for the stick-built option to 2.9, 2.7, and 2.7 for the varying modular options. Phasing, general conditions, general requirements, insurance, escalation, that line item there is typically, again, based upon a lot of different factors, and it's based upon costs above for all the line items above. It's also associated with construction duration. It's also associated with some of the other unknowns, with whether it be utilities, etc., within the project. So that's why that varies slightly. And then what we did is we have the estimated construction cost. So this adds up all of the items above, and again, rounded just for conversation. Again, we're at super high level here. There's a lot of assumptions that are made, but a lot of the same assumptions are made across the board to try to just give you a comparison of where these stack up. So the stick-built option is 35.2 million construction costs, and then option 1 is 33.5 million, option 2 is 29.9, and option 3 is 30.6. So you can see they're all clustered within a $5 million range, depending on which option moves forward. The next line item is the soft costs. And again, this is the fees, the FF&E, furniture, fixtures, and equipment, technology, contingencies, etc. These, as I mentioned, are based on percentages of that construction cost line item. So what we are holding right now, and these can change as it moves forward, but our best guess based upon this point is 27% for the addition renovation option. This is for that stick-built option, and then 24% for the modulars. The reason why the modulars are slightly less, 3% less, is because a slightly shorter construction duration, as well as a little bit smaller lift from the design team. There's still a significant lift from the design team with layouts and engineering and site work, but it's slightly less. So that's why there's that 3% difference. What I did was then totaled the soft costs and the construction costs to get you a single number. So for instance, the 44.7 for the stick-built option, all the way across the board, you see all the other values. To really establish the variations between these, what we would recommend moving forward, though, is really a range being identified. So what we would recommend at this point is a plus or minus 5%, because again, there's a lot of assumptions, but we felt it important to give you a single number for conversations and comparison purposes instead of trying to do the math quickly of all the ranges and so forth. So last slide real quick, and then we can open it up because I'm sure there's a lot of questions or comments. So this is that same organization matrix that we'd previously shown. You can see on the left is the original building addition, 44.7 million. What we've also done is we've priced the 2 levels of finishes for the modulars. The numbers that we just reviewed were for the level A finish, so that's the more durable finish. Excuse me. What we did was we also priced the level B finish. So again, a slight reduction, approximately 2.5 million or so. You can see the delta between each of those. So this slide right here summarizes the 7 different options of pricing for each of these. Again, really through the 4 building options, excuse me, but it's identifying the 2 different levels. Additionally, all of this pricing here includes those 4 alternates. So the chillers, the rooftop units, the playground, and the fire alarm system within the existing building. So I'll pause there. That was
That's a lot.
a lot of information. And yeah, we can open up questions, comments.
Can I just bring it back to one thing that was asked at the last meeting? And you talked through the differences in terms of materials between level A and B. Can you just remind us what you thought the broad estimated lifespan of level A versus B construction would look like?
Yeah, so this slide here is not in your packet. It's a backup slide in anticipation of that question, but it's the same one that we had shown previously. It's the difference between type A finish and type B finish. And we went through this previously, but in reality, a lot of that comes down to maintenance, how well the building's upkept. With that being said, type A is the more durable option. And we'll call it between 15 and 20 years or so. Type B is the less durable option, and I would say probably 10 to 15 years. So you're reducing it. I mean, now if there's maintenance, upkeep, you can stretch that, but at the end of the day, it's still, neither of these options are as durable as a stick-built option.
And a stick-built option, the lifespan is,
50 years.
50 years?
Yep.
Yeah.
With the lifespans of the modulars, I just don't understand enough about modulars and how they're upkept. If they need significant repair, you could go in and repair them and potentially extend the life, or is that not?
Yeah, you could. So the reason why modulars typically aren't as durable is just the type of construction. They move a little bit more. Things crack, they break, they bend, they move. Whereas the stick-built option is superstructure of steel, concrete slabs. It's there. So just the movement, the shifting, plus the materials of kids banging into the wall, it won't necessarily damage the surface. It may or may not, but that wall, if a kid bangs into it, is going to start moving more than what a stick-built option would. So it's just over that life of constant moving, use, abuse, exactly. It's going to start. Now, you could go in, your floor is starting to crack, you can replace the floor. You could patch the drywall, you could replace those components. But that's, after X number of years, you're going to get cracking again. It's
Right, it's not going to
constant
save the
upkeep.
building, but it will.
Right.
Maybe extend the life.
It'll extend the life, yes.
All right, so,
I don't really have any, it's very self-explanatory.
I mean, I think from a personal level, I mean, I'm not surprised. When we looked at this almost 10 years ago, the modulars were coming in fairly close to the construction cost. I do think, as we talked about last time, personally, I don't see modulars, option 2 or 3, as really being educationally feasible, with them being, so far, the only one that I think that could potentially be feasible is installing a firewall and connecting a building directly, and sort of replicating what we have in the brick and mortar. But in doing that, we're talking about a $3 million difference and double the lifespan. To me, it just isn't logical. I don't know how other people feel. I know people are concerned about the price, but I just don't think you get more for your dollar in these other solutions.
I agree.
Yeah.
And you're also, in the same situation 15 years down the road, right?
And starting over again with another,
With the higher cost
exactly.
at that point.
Yeah, so I think for the purpose of this exercise, why we're all here, if you had to pick one to compare, to vote against, because there is a significant difference in cost, modular 2 would be the one to go. I mean, I don't think it's even worth the vote between option 1 and the stick built. Like, it's just not that, there's no savings there really.
Right.
So being that we need to provide an option, an alternative, to me 2 makes better sense. just because there is some savings there.
I mean, I think where I would view it, I don't disagree with you. I think that the exercise of comparing option one to a permanent building renovation, it's so close as to be non-comparable, right? Like you should just have a permanent building relative to that option. I dislike option three just because of what I perceive to be the educational impacts that would result from that, and I don't see a huge price spread there either. I mean, I think the purpose of the exercise, as I understand it, is to decide based upon the options, is one of these options better compared to a permanent building? Here, where you're looking at, if you want to compare option two to the stick-built option, you're looking at a savings of, fast math, under $7 million, which is, it's more than 10%. But at the same time, to the point that everyone else has been making, you're looking at a building that is actually, based upon my poor math, more like a third of the lifespan, with additional upkeep costs, and a necessary solution when that option fails even if it was 25 years, right? So...
Well, and including educational
impacts. Right, like just looking at it from a cost perspective, for me, I don't see it as being...
Right, you might save more up front, but actually pay more for the solution in the end, because in 20 years, you've got to replace it at a higher rate.
And then, concurrent with that, you're having, the impacts that would result from having kids having to traverse back and forth. And, I think that those are very valid, significant concerns. They're concerns that I have. But, I do think that at the primary focus is fiscal, too. And to my mind, if it's a question of $37 million versus $44 million, both of which are tremendous sums of money, I guess kind of backing into it as a taxpayer, because at this point, at the point that this happens, relative to this building, I will just be a taxpayer. I will have no children coming in or out of the school building. For me, I would rather, Todd Lindmark would be the person to really say, what is the $6 to $7 million difference going to look like on your annual tax bill? I find it hard to believe that it would be so significant that I would want to, as a taxpayer, invest that much money in something that I don't view as being a long-term solution.
And come back in 10 years and
ask for more money. Exactly. So
I think the two things that this committee was tasked with was, so we had done the full feasibility study of the building addition, and we had the price quotes, and we were ready to move forward with a recommendation to the town to secure the funding. And then what we got as a question was, have you vetted modulars? Would they be less expensive? Are they a better solution for the town? So I don't think that this committee has to come forward with a plan A and plan B. I think we have to vet all of the modular options against the building and come together with what we think is the best solution. So I think we have to make one recommendation for what we feel is the best solution and be able to explain why.
So we don't need to select an alternative?
You do not. We need to come forward with it. We had to vet all the possible options to see if there was one that was a better solution for the town, that would be a better return or a better solution. But this committee has to come forward with one recommendation. So that said, I think we also, after looking at this, have to decide as a committee, is there any other feasible solution that we wanted to look at? I know people have talked about, could you do a third site? We sort of ruled that out because cost-wise, it's probably more expensive and it only fixes the problem at one building. But I think we would need one more meeting to kind of talk through, is there anything else that we haven't explored or done due diligence around? But I think the end goal is to have one recommendation that we bring forward to the town with a justification in the backup for why we're making that choice.
Okay, I thought we were going to
do an A and B.
The best of the three options to vote against, because if that's the case, then I don't. 1, 2, or 3, none of them make sense. I don't think to me with those costs. I was actually pretty surprised how close they came in. The modulars versus the stick build. I didn't expect that.
I think no matter what we decide, right, I do think that we are going to have to be prepared for these numbers to be challenged. Not that I don't believe them, but I think they are what I had expected, which is pretty close. But I think there are people who thought that there was going to be a much wider spread in what this cost. And so, I do think, to your point, option 2, maybe that's the one that's, the most potentially cost save. I think we will have to be really tight in justifying if we don't go with that, what are the educational impacts? Like what does this look like in reality so that we can justify?
Yeah, I mean, I think of all three, the only one that really reflects any kind of significant savings is option 2, which is $7 million. But again, for a third of the life expectancy, so there's
And
that.
significant disruption.
And disruption
Yeah,
to educational servicing.
And I think the biggest concern or concerns that we have when we talked about this prior is this model, it's not detached. So there's safety concerns about kids being able to be coming in and out of the building. So that's paramount, but also concerns about time on learning, because to go to lunch you have to pack up and get your snow gear on and go. So there's quite a few things that are lost in that $7 million. And I think if you look at the total, long-term cost, it's probably higher.
Well, that's kind of what I think we'll need to be prepared to justify in that silly things. I know we just started kicking around last time, but if someone's dismissed early, that person can't just walk to the office, right? So, I mean, there is even staffing implications.
Going
because
to the
then
nurse.
Going to the nurse
yeah.
or a late arrival. There are times when kids need to move around the facility.
And then there's very real concerns that we were asked when we looked at modulars 10 years ago around lockdown.
Right.
They have a separate detached building with no nurse that can't get to the second building. So there's other things
Right.
in that we would have to consider too.
Is there a way we can quantify the loss?
Yeah, I think we could, and I thought it was worth getting the prices first to see if they are any that we wanted to rule out and not spend time on. But I do think that I could come back to the next meeting with I'd work with my special education and admin team with this is what the impact would be if we went with modular 2. These are the concerns that we would have, and these are what we would lose from the educational standpoint. We could certainly bring that forward. And I think the other thing that we should talk about as a committee is, at this point, I think it might be, there's a lot going on in town right now, but we had talked about having a community forum so that this is very transparent and people could, I think it would be helpful to be able to share the 3 modular solutions we looked at, what the costs were in some discussion. So I think we could at the next meeting really talk about the educational impact of the different situations. I'd like to focus it on probably just modular 2 because the other 2 aren't really feasible. And then we could talk about at that point if we're ready to have a public forum or draft public, put something in our newsletter or kind of keep people informed of this process. Is there anybody who wants to make an argument for modular 1 or 3?
No, and I guess we don't have a vote on the agenda, but can we move to exclude them from future consideration, or is that?
We didn't put a vote on the agenda. I think what we could do is say, if you want, I could come back with more detailed information about the educational impact on modular 2, and at the next meeting we could decide, do we want to explore anything further, or do we want to?
I think especially because one of us isn't here, that would be a prudent choice. Because I do think that this is going to be, it feels like the right move, but I want to make sure that we're doing it in the,
Absolutely.
most.
So I can put that together. Justin, in terms of, because I do think the community will question pricing, can you get us some information about the cost estimating firm? Just because you didn't estimate it, you sent it out to a firm that does all kinds of school-based estimates and is well respected. I think that would be helpful to have too.
I think we brought this up, I can't remember. Is there an impact on staffing? If you were to go with one of the modular, would FTEs go up? Or would they, compared to the stick build? Would we need more teachers, more administrative assistants, more?
I'd have to look at it further.
I feel like we would.
on the surface, it's going to be the same number of classroom teachers in either, like, in the
Right,
building or
right.
out. And we did account for having offices, like the special ed would be the receiving office that would buzz people in and out of the building. However, we are going to have teachers that are going to lose time because they have a group out in the modular and back. So would it have an impact on our FTEs for math support or paraprofessional? Possibly, because I have to account for that time. When we have specialists that are traveling, like when we put music on a cart, I had to give 10 minutes between each class period to allow for the person to travel with all their equipment. So I could look at that further, but yes, it's possible it would impact the efficiency of our existing staff in delivery of services in a way that would merit increasing some additional positions.
Because this would be 2 drop-offs, right? Option 2? 2 drop-off?
Probably
Kids?
not. The kids would probably have to come in through the building and be supervised and escorted out.
All the way through?
Yeah.
Oh,
Because we only have one bus loop, so we couldn't have them looping through twice. So again, lost learning time because it's going to take them longer to get to their homeroom class and get situated. Probably more staffing supervising drop-off because we need people watching them
Yeah.
travel,
but the day gets extended.
The day.
Which is the whole other.
which is a big
whole other
cost.
issue,
Big
Large
cost.
cost, yeah, extending the school days.
Yes.
Well, and you may,
But those are good points because that is something that I can include in looking at the analysis.
I mean, you could opt to hire someone to just help shuttle kids back and forth so that teachers don't have to do that, right? I mean, if the cost of a teacher.
We would probably put paraprofessionals out because
Someone.
teachers have to be, like, I can't have teachers out here because then kids are going to classrooms without a teacher and that's not ever good, so.
Right, but you may have to have
Yeah.
some
We
additional
might have to have
help
additional help in the morning.
in that.
Yeah. And again, I think financially, it's a short-term savings, but probably a long-term cost. And it does come with, I think, significant concerns from a safety perspective. And also probably maintenance efficiencies too, because you'd have all different surfacings than what we have, so we can't use the same kinds of cleaning equipment and this is linoleum floors, Justin?
Yeah, and not only different types of equipment, even if it was the same, you would need 2 sets because you're not going to bring
You're not going to walk the wax.
your
Walk the carpet cleaner,
through the parking lot to go clean floors or
Yeah.
whatever it may be. So it's duplicating
Yeah.
other items.
And is there, I guess I just hadn't thought about this, but is there even room for that additional,
We do have,
storage?
yeah, we do have
Storage,
some
yeah.
storage areas included, so.
There's an elevator in option 2,
Yes,
right? Okay.
and any of the 2-story
Right,
options,
there it
there's
is.
an
I just-
elevator.
What I might do also, as I'm putting together the educational impact and, considerations for modular, I might also have our school resource officers take a look, because I think they should weigh in on the security in terms of responding to critical incidents and how it might impact their approach. Because they have whole plans for how they come as a team if there's ever an issue at Freeman that might have to be re-evaluated and could require additional response people too, because you've got 2 buildings you're protecting. So I'll reach out to have them give some initial impressions too.
Okay.
Is it possible, I don't know if this is even, but, there are certain things that happen, not routinely at the school, but for example, when there's a med flight, right, there are procedures
Yep.
in this building.
Yep.
So maybe if we can ask them to say how they would need to change their approach to these things that do
Yep.
happen, right?
Yep.
It's not like, you knock on wood and pray that but these things happen on a routine basis.
Yeah. That's like medical emergencies, if we had a medical emergency with a student. I can look at that too.
As it relates to, everything going on in the town with the new residents, I guess, are we just assuming for this exercise that there won't be any long-term implications?
Yeah, at this point, the state is holding pretty firmly that this is a 1-year temporary shelter. They only have a 6-month occupancy permit and can apply for 1 additional permit for another 6 months. Potentially could extend it beyond that, but they have been very clear and on record as saying they have no intent of applying for extensions. So by the time this is actually built are here, I don't expect that we'll be accommodating any additional students from that.
I've moved on to something else.
There'll be some other unknown. Justin, just one other question, and it hasn't been a significant issue here, but as you're talking about emergency plans, severe weather, how do these modulars withstand, like the kinds of hurricane, heavy snow load, those kinds of things that we're...
Yeah, so even though
Tornado.
they're modulars, they still need to be built to code, which is engineered for snow loads, for
Okay.
wind loads, etc. So,
Okay.
it
So
would
that's
still
part of probably why they're not as inexpensive as people would expect.
right, exactly. So yeah, they would still be able to sustain
The same
amount without collapsing or
Okay.
anything like that. So.
Right, that's good to know.
Is it, I don't know if this is feasible, might be silly, but so there are certain things about the modulars that I think we've said before are going to make these significantly more expensive than people initially would think, right? Because you think modular, you think like the trailer outside,
Right.
that's cheap. And this might be more trouble than it's worth, but like a lot of these the pre-K classrooms need additional plumbing, which I think we had said is a driver of the cost. Is there a way to understand how much of a driver of that cost? Like,
Or what the key drivers
Yeah,
of
what-
modular costs are.
right, because I think what we're gonna get is like, okay, fine, the materials or whatever, I could go to Lowe's and cost that out, and it just doesn't make any sense. Well,
We got a lot of that when we redid the roof. I could put a roof on
Well,
for
so that's what I'm
less.
trying to like,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, putting a dollar value to it is a little bit tricky and would take a lot of sifting, and it wouldn't equate to total project. Like
Yep.
there's a lot of variables, but what I can do is pull together a bullet point list of every pre-K classroom needs a toilet.
yep.
So that's going to increase the cost.
And a typical modular would not, because it's a
Like a
high school
high school
classroom.
modular,
Right,
yeah.
like.
Exactly.
Because I think those things would be helpful, because.
Yeah, here's a list of items that are driving up the cost of
A
the
modular
modular
solution.
that you would not think of.
That
or
when we
not-
thought this was a great idea,
Yep.
we weren't thinking about it holistically.
And I also think that one of the things that stands out too is that regardless of the modular option, the site construction costs are pretty much the same. It's $3 million
it's
for
wild.
site construction,
Yeah,
because you've got to bring electric and all that out. So those are major drivers. So just bringing it in because it's built doesn't mean you still have to connect it. So I think that's another
Turn the lights
important
off.
driver. Yes.
Flush the toilet.
Flush the toilet, yes.
So $3 million is, 10% of the cost is just the site work to prepare for those.
I mean, I do think it's relevant to point out at this late stage in our process here that, our other task was to review the demography too. And I mean, regardless of the choice that we elect to move forward with.
Right.
We need 36,000 square feet
Yes. To accommodate the anticipated enrollment growth.
what we anticipate seeing, and I just think that amount of square footage to me, for me coming into this, and I'm much more educated now about modulars than I was, a few months ago. Thank you, Justin. But I have seen them, I have heard about them, I have seen them as stopgaps during construction, I have seen them as temporary solutions in towns where they're having a very well-identified bubble in enrollment growth, but not, someone coming in and saying as a permanent choice, we want to do 36,000 square feet of modular space. Like,
You're right, because that was the other, I forgot how much we've actually accomplished, but the first task was to verify the enrollment projections to see, is this a short-term, which could have driven a different, if we're looking at a 5-year bubble, then some of these might make sense because you wouldn't be, but that wasn't what the demography showed. So, you're right.
Remind me the rooftop mechanical units, because those are 3 million. Like what's the urgency there? What are those?
So these are, and maybe I think just for the purposes of helping the public understand, Justin, I wonder if rather than building those into all of these costs, we want to list them as an alt separate. Like, just because they have to be, if we do nothing, the town needs to replace the chiller, the mannequin, this has to be done.
So those have to happen.
They have to happen. These units, the mechanical system chiller and the rooftops are all end of life. That's all your HVAC and everything in this building. correct me if I'm wrong, because this is not my forte. The playground updates, the fencing has been falling apart, the surfacing isn't safe, we can't get anybody, desperately tried to bring people out to repair it, nobody will touch it, it needs to be redone. And the fire alarm system is proprietary, so only certain people will come to work on it, and you could speak more about that, because I'll say the wrong thing.
Like, just to replace one of these heads are like $500. They don't make,
And they're failing.
yeah.
Yeah. So those are things that we had put them into the building costs as like alts. The town could opt to, we're going to award the contract and we'll do these 3 alts.
Yeah.
Because there's efficiencies in doing it while you have a crane on site and have a team mobilized to do the work. But they really aren't part of the building cost. They are capital items the town needs to address that they could choose to do while we're doing a building project. So I think I gave you the different direction before, but I'm going to change it. If we could pull those out as other pending capital needs of the town.
I think that's fair.
I think that would, because that'll bring the overall down by $5 million.
And you'll have
almost.
people say that, why don't you just do one, but then don't do the mechanical units?
Yeah.
Right, like, because then you can kind of get the
Right.
numbers closer.
You're right,
That's
you're
not
right.
a possibility, that I think we have to show it a different way.
Yes.
Yeah, I can get
Right.
those up.
So for next meeting,
Sorry, just one more question. Is there a way we could quantify the savings on that, on those costs? Because we're doing it now, how much are we saving versus if we do it in 5 years? Or if it lasts that long?
or if we do it outside of the building project.
do it
To get
Outside of
the
this
crane
budget.
on site.
Yeah.
Or
Yeah, so what we would just do ballpark is, so the items with mechanical systems, that is a volatile component with the market. That had one of the biggest swings during COVID, supply chain issues, et cetera. So what we do at this point is just provide what we would assume escalation would be 5 years out to get you a ballpark. And then as you get closer, you would have to determine if it was accurate or not. But that would be a way of projecting 5 years out.
is it
Even
possible
if
to
we did
wait
15
5 years?
Well, no, I was gonna say, even if you did the cost, if this was all we were doing, were these replacements? Like, if it was an independent project, what would it cost versus lumping it in?
To a building project, I see what you're saying. What do we
Well, I
save
think
by
I did
doing
5
that?
years, but now I'm thinking, well, you could just do apples for apples now.
Right. Yeah, we can pull those numbers. It's the sum of that with, you would need some soft costs included, obviously not the full 27 or 24% because there's no FF&E involved.
Yeah.
Contingency will still be there, but it's gonna be minimal. Like, a lot of those values can go down. But yeah, what we can do is I'll update this chart to pull all those items out of it.
Yeah.
And then what the total would be for those items there.
Yeah. And then you can give us a total, like, if you do this separately, this is how much you can anticipate it, the cost would go up because you don't have a crew? All right, great. So we can do, for the next meeting, we can have that information updated. I can work on bringing you the, educational impact of moving forward with the second modular solution, as well as some feedback and input from the police in terms of the public safety impact. And then I think we could discuss if there's any, I want to loop Justin in, if there's any other viable things that we need to vet. I'm not sure that there are. I don't believe that there are, but I'd want the whole building committee to be comfortable that there's.
Mike, have you been, are you aware of the other options that have been floated other than a third site? Because that might be.
I don't know if, that's why I wanted to wait for Justin.
Yeah.
I don't know if he's heard from the select board or from the public any other,
Because I know that they were new to me when I
Yeah.
heard them.
we've been asked a couple of times about what about a third site and putting an early childhood center in there. And we ruled that out originally because the cost of building an early childhood center isn't remarkably less than any of these, because now you're building a whole building with a cafeteria and a kitchen and driveway and access and clearing. Plus, it only solves the problem at HOD. It doesn't address the future problem of anticipated growth here. So I think we should discuss it again in case people see it differently, but I don't see a third site as a viable option, but I know some people in town have been interested in,
Yes.
would that be cheaper? So I think just we should discuss it and kind of weigh the pros and cons.
Or using an existing site.
Renovating and retrofitting a building is generally I've heard people say, could you take away the library and renovate that building? Could you pick the senior center? I mean, just like, people are just spitballing ideas.
Which I just think we should.
Yeah, we should talk about, but I don't know if any of those were serious. Those are just things people say on the fly, like, why don't you use the library? No one goes to a library anymore. Like,
Right. But if we just
I don't know that that's a real
I
suggestion, or if people are just kind of brainstorming.
Right. I mean, and I think it would be reasonable, I mean, because I just, loitering around town government for as long as I've lived in town, I think sort of have a knowledge of what property does the town even own?
Well, I don't know, and that's where Justin
That's why I think it
might
might be helpful
yeah.
to come in and sort of, and that may have changed since the last time I was paying attention to it, but I know, I think when this was first being evaluated, which predates my involvement, the town does not own that many parcels of land that aren't currently being used for a purpose, I mean, that don't have a structure on it, or aren't a solar field, or,
Or would potentially be large enough for a facility.
and that
even,
could
right?
accommodate the facility
Yeah.
we're talking about.
Because we know now how big it
Before,
has to
and
be.
I really would have, Rich McCarthy could weigh in. He would better be able to address that. But I know we had talked originally, when we looked, and this is 10 years ago, about the site that Old Town Hall was on. And I think there were some environmental and other concerns with that property at the time. But I'd have to go back and look. There was land near the senior center, I believe, but I don't know if it was large enough, and it also creates a third busing location and pickup drop-off location, but I don't know if there's anything else. And I also don't know if there's other, I don't know if people had other, serious thoughts about buildings that could be repurposed, or I don't know if that was just casual conversation. So I think Justin would have a better sense of that, and then we could decide, is there something viable to look at, or are we ready to move forward with, a recommendation to the town?
I would prefer not to commandeer the library.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I do think there's people that really feel, and I mean, libraries have changed. There's a lot available digitally, and I know that was a question. I don't know that would be a large enough site or a feasible option, or, Justin, you'd probably know better, but retrofitting things to elementary or school code is often more pricey from what we...
Yeah, especially with the youngest population.
Because of plumbing and all of that.
Just the requirements are a lot more restrictive than your older kids, so it would be more expensive.
Yeah, so...
And quite frankly, with the whole master plan work going on, I think they're looking at the library as, a hub of Town Hill, which...
Yeah. And like I said, I just don't want to speak for Justin, and I don't know if people were just, brainstorming, or if there's real viable things that we should discuss further, so I just don't want to...
I think that I would be interested in Justin's feedback about that, because I don't think it's the task of this committee to decide, that we should take preeminence over any other, and I'm not saying that anyone's suggesting that, but I think that we have to have a reasonable dialogue around.
I think we just have to do our due diligence around what
Yes.
potential other options there are, and if we determine that there's no there, then that's fine.
Right.
Perfect.
But I do think it will best serve this committee to make sure that everybody on the committee feels we have fully looked at all the options and that we're confident in the recommendation we're making. And we don't want to shortchange anything that's really could potentially be viable. So, all right, and then Justin, you can bring the updated numbers and some information on the price estimate, cost drivers for the modulars, as well as background on the estimating firm. Great. Anything else anybody thinks would be helpful? Air conditioning in this room? It's actually,
Yeah.
you don't think it's bad? I think it's stuffy in here.
It's stuffy for sure, but it's also been closed up.
It is?
It was off when we came in.
Oh, you turned it on? All right, great.
Well, thank you.
Thank you.
So do we want to talk meeting dates or meeting time?
Sure.
I think that's going to probably need... I could do like Monday the 29th. Is 3 weeks reasonable, Justin? Or?
I'm out of
Right.
town. There's
Are you out that week?
The whole week and part of the following week.
Okay.
How much time do we,
What about are you back the 7th, Wednesday? I'm here the week.
Yeah, I can make the evening of the 7th.
That week, the 5th through the
Yep.
Oh, wait a minute, I'd have to do virtual, I'm away.
I mean, the changes, well, I guess Ingrid, the heaviest lift is on yours,
Yeah,
your
and
side, so.
Our team has a lot of heavy lifts going on right now. But fall town meeting's not till November, so we would still have time if there's something we wanted to. Could we do, we could do it virtually. We could do a virtual meeting. I don't see any reason we couldn't if that works for people. Or we could do the week of the 19th of August too.
I feel sooner than that, especially if we
The
want to
12th?
start to do, if we want to do any sort of
Forum.
forum.
Okay. So do you want to try,
Virtual on the 7th? Is that,
I could do a virtual meeting on the 7th, or we could try the week before. I could have something by the week of the 22nd if you want to do it sooner. It's up to you guys.
The 22nd?
That
Is
week,
that-
in
is that
2
when
weeks, I could have, this isn't going to take a lot of time to get together on our
you're
end.
around? Okay, all
The
right.
26th, the week of the 26th, I'm leaving the 26th, so.
Okay.
The week of the 22nd is better for me.
Why don't we, what about Monday, the 22nd? Does that work, Justin?
Yes.
Let's do Monday, the 22nd.
Okay.
And I'll confirm with Justin if he will be, he's supposed to be back, so if that date works for him.
Okay.
If not, then do we want to pick a backup date?
24th?
Yeah.
Or, I don't know what softball's like.
Yeah, I'd have to do virtual on that.
I think it's fine that week. Looks like it's fine.
Okay,
That's what Game Changer's for.
I know, right?
all right. Sounds good. Thanks, everybody.
All right. If there are no further comments, concerns, questions, can I get a motion to adjourn
So moved.
the meeting? Second. All right, all those in favor? Aye.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you, Justin.